Good morning, CaneSport. It's August the 25th, 2023. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined this morning by Stephen Wagner, the understudy of the great one. I'll tell you why in a minute, as we discuss the news of the day. And Stephen, before we get to the news of the day, I got to tell you, this is going to make you proud. I got a little note from one of our viewers / subscribers yesterday, and he titled it Stephen Wagner, and I opened it up, and the guy says, I don't know where you found that kid, but man, he is impressive for someone so young. And I thought that would make you proud, make your mom proud. I know she watches the show every day, and people are noticing the ripe greatness that you bring to the table. But speaking of greatness, we've got some interesting stuff to talk about today because the Miami Hurricanes are on the cusp of greatness as they go into a very critical weekend here with a couple commit announcements from David Stone, the defensive tackle from IMG Academy, as well as Zaquan Patterson, the safety from Hollywood Chaminade. And these two commits this weekend, Stephen, are going to shape the Miami recruiting class.
Yeah, they 100% are. These are two commitments where I think that there's a possibility that Miami lands one of them, neither of them, or both of them. I think all three possibilities are very much in play. I think Miami has kind of moved from being a dark horse for David Stone to really kind of being a threat to Oklahoma, who for so long was viewed as this front runner, and it was kind of just penciled in and assumed like, oh yeah, kid from Oklahoma City, the Sooners being the hometown school, that's going to be where he's going to go. I don't think that's a sure thing by any means anymore. Miami has pushed hard. They are throwing everything at David Stone. They are going to leave everything. They are going to leave everything on the table. They are going to put everything on the line whenever he makes his decision. And they are doing a lot of stuff that I think is going to make a lot of people very anxious. It seems like there's a decent amount of anxiety on both the Miami side of things and the Oklahoma side of things at the moment, with, quite frankly, a lot of uncertainty about the direction that he's ultimately going to pick. I was asked about this the other day, and I would say, if I absolutely had to, if I was forced to pick someone, I'd probably have to say Oklahoma, but that is penciled in at the very, very best, because I think Miami is a serious threat there. And then, of course, Zaquan Patterson, local four-star prospect, number 80 overall recruit in the On3 industry ranking, number 3 safety in the country, really, really major recruit who Miami has been after for some time, a recruit that Miami for quite some time was recruiting harder than anybody else in the class. But as time went on in the 2024 cycle, some of these other schools, Michigan, Florida State, Auburn, they upped their effort to match what Miami was doing. And all of a sudden, these other schools became real threats to Miami. Going into this weekend, I think that race is almost too close to call. I was asked on Josh Newberg's show the other day to pick a team, and I had to kind of pick Florida State by the thinnest of thin margins. But there's a reason why I haven't entered a projection into the recruiting prediction machine. It's simply too tight. It really feels like a lot of people are hearing good things on a lot of sides, which tells me that basically no one's really hearing anything certain. If everyone's hearing the same thing, then no one's hearing nothing. I think that there is a lot of anxiety on a lot of sides about both of these recruitments. And if either or both of these kids commit to Miami, I mean, that completely reshapes the way this class is looked at. With David Stone, interior defensive line is a position of ultimate need. The importance of that position is paramount in this recruiting cycle. So far, the only interior defensive lineman they have is Artavius Jones, the four-star defensive tackle out of Blountstown, Florida. If you add 5-star David Stone, I think that has a similar effect to this class as what Francis Mauigoa had whenever he committed to the Hurricanes last year. I think David Stone's impact to the defensive side would be the same thing that Francis Mauigoa's impact was to the offensive side. So I think that this recruiting weekend is absolutely massive, and Saturday is going to be a greatly anticipated recruiting day.
Now it's funny because I know I'm going to surprise you when I say this, because I think you forgot that there was a point back in March where you did enter in a prediction for Zaquan Patterson to go to Miami with a 70% probability back on March 31st. Well, I have not done so, and the reason that I haven't done it is because, like you said, it is seeming wide open with Florida State and Michigan also in the mix. If you look at the RPM, Miami's at 28.1%, Michigan's at 1.6%, while Florida State's at 67.2%. The Seminoles are the universal favorite in the clubhouse right now. I think Michigan at 1.6 is way undervalued here. I think Michigan actually is as legit of a contender for Zaquan Patterson as Florida State and Miami. So embrace that, Canes Nation, as we get ready for these Saturday announcements. But let's talk about David Stone first. And I'm not being a drama queen when I say shaping the Miami recruiting class. Miami came into this class intent on landing 1 to 2 of the elite defensive tackles in the country, and none are more highly regarded than David Stone. They didn't get Kamarian Franklin last week. He went to Ole Miss. To me, that upped the ante for Miami to land David Stone. They already were all in, so you can't want David Stone anymore. You can't recruit him any harder. But it does make the announcement on Saturday even more critical than maybe it might have been as critical as it was in the first place, because this could be the last shot at an elite defensive tackle. They will try to flip everybody in December. There's no doubt about it. The big guns will come out the last few weeks in December. There's no doubt about it. But at this point, August, with the football season starting, you would love to be in the driver's seat by landing that commitment right now, even if it is just setting the market for even more battles in the month of December. And so these are big announcements for Miami Saturday for the momentum of the recruiting class, Stephen.
Yeah, it definitely is. And people talk about so much how in today's day and age of recruiting, commitment doesn't mean what it used to mean, because it used to be, once a kid's committed, he's completely shut down. This is the only school that he's talking to, the only thing he's locked in on. He's not entertaining offers from any other schools anymore. Now we see a lot of kids commit and they continue to go on visits, and their recruitment isn't actually finalized until the moment that pen hits paper on signing day. But I will say the majority of kids in the country, once they commit, they don't flip. Yeah, flips do happen, but I sure as heck would rather be the school that this player is committed to than the school that's on the outside looking in trying to flip him. It's a heck of a lot easier to get a girl to go out with you once than to convince a girl she should dump the guy she's currently with and then go out with you. I mean, I wouldn't know either way. My personal experience, I would never have any experience in such things. But you see the point that I'm making. I would much rather be in the driver's seat and be in that kind of controlling position in a guy like David Stone's recruitment, and Zaquan Patterson's too, for that matter. Zaquan is a very highly touted 4-star recruit as well. Like we said earlier, number 80 overall prospect in the On3 industry ranking. These are both guys that you would like to have in Coral Gables, because you know that once you get them to commit, and the continued effort that Miami is going to continue to recruit these guys with until literally the second that pen hits paper on signing day, it is going to be really, really difficult for someone to flip a recruit away from Miami. So, yeah, would definitely rather be in the driver's seat with both of those guys.
So we were talking about Stone and, defensive tackles. I mean, listen, Zaquan Patterson's a nice safety, no argument. Defensive tackles are so important to a football team. Miami's got Leonard Taylor this year, who everyone's expecting to bust out and become dominant. hopefully on more than an every now and then basis. One of the big variables of this upcoming football season is Leonard Taylor becoming an every down force. He's got the capability. He has shown that he can do it in practice from what we've heard. Now he's got to bring it to game day. Leonard Taylor needs to be one of the best defensive tackles in the country. That can change the whole season, quite frankly. And Miami rebuilt the offensive line in the last recruiting class. This year it's the defensive line's turn, and you got to land. You got to get a 5-star stud like this if you want to do it the way that Mario Cristobal's doing it. So we're going to be all over that. We've got stories on the website this morning. We'll have more as the weekend goes forward. We will be tracking that commitment. If he comes to Miami, we will have mega coverage on his commitment and what it means for the Hurricanes. So stay on the lookout for that as the weekend goes forward. Zaquan Patterson, a little bit of a different deal. He's from Hollywood Chaminade, obviously a school where Miami is trying to have a foothold. And for a long time, I took this one for granted, Stephen. Like, I just assumed that Miami was landing Zaquan Patterson. And then, Florida State turned up the heat and has gotten in the mix. He loves Michigan. He has not kept that a secret from us. He has told us how much he loves Michigan. So this is now a 3-team race. This is not a slam dunk for Miami, but it's personal for Miami because he's a local prospect. They've put a lot of time into recruiting him, and obviously they want to land him on Saturday. So your thoughts, you've watched this whole thing evolve. You put an RPM in for Zaquan Patterson to Miami in March. Quite a while ago. What's that? 5 months ago. Okay. To the point where you didn't even remember you did it. I looked it up and saw you did it. So that means that in March, he was on our radar as likely going to Miami. And I would have agreed with you in March. But now it's more question. This seems like it's wide open. It's going to go down to the wire. You said that you believe that Florida State leads by a razor hair margin as we go into the final 24 hours before the commit. Just give us a quick summation of where your head is at in terms of Zaquan Patterson right now.
A lot like you, Gary. Back in March, I was kind of taking his recruitment for granted. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, Miami's absolutely going to land this guy. I even posted on message boards multiple times saying I truly believe Miami's going to end up with JoJo Trader and Zaquan Patterson. Right now, Miami's already got JoJo Trader, still waiting to hear what the final ruling is going to be on Patterson. But yeah, a big reason why I put that RPM in back in March was every single time that I talked to Patterson and every time that I've talked to him over the summer, even the other day, whenever I had a chance to actually get out to Chaminade and chat with him, he keeps on using the word home whenever he refers to Miami. And home is not a word that Patterson uses very lightly at all. It's not a word that very many recruits use lightly, period, because I think most prospects in today's day and age know, hey, whenever I'm calling a place home, that's kind of a signal to the rest of the world, this school is my front runner right now. And he said multiple times back in the spring, yeah, Miami's my number one. And then, we've got Michigan, Florida State, Ohio State, Auburn, those other schools that are pushing very aggressively. And then over the summer, he took one visit to Miami back in June, and then he took 2 visits each to Florida State, Michigan, and Auburn. That was alarming to some folks, but it was clarified to me that the reason that he took those visits to those 3 schools, or that he took multiple visits to those 3 schools, was not because Miami had fallen out of favor with him, but rather because those 3 schools just happened to have recruiting events on weekends that matched up with his schedule, and he was available. And he also simply felt like Miami's a school in his backyard. He can go to Coral Gables anytime that he feels like it. Now, obviously, the Canes would like to have him down as much as they possibly can. And he still plans to take maybe 2 or 3 official visits by the time that signing day rolls around. We expect to see him at a couple of Miami games this year. He didn't say which ones, but he is planning on getting down to some Miami games. He also wants to attend the Michigan-Ohio State game up at the Big House, and then he's also looking at some other games at different schools. He said that his recruitment is going to stay open up until signing day, but it is going to be incredibly hard for a school to flip him once he makes that decision. He's not completely making up his mind, but he's probably saying, "Hey, I've got a 90 to a 95% chance this is the school that I ultimately sign with, and you're going to have to show me something pretty incredible to pull me away from that school." So he's not quite locking in, but he's kind of taking that mental step in the direction of locking in by making that school his undoubted clear favorite to ultimately sign him. And we're finally going to get the big reveal on Saturday.
All right, and you guys can, as I said, over the weekend, follow that coverage. We will have it for you at CaneSport.com. One kid that is already committed is 2025 quarterback Luke Nickel from Milton High School. And he came down to Fort Lauderdale last night to begin his junior season of high school in a game against Fort Lauderdale Western. Not the greatest team in South Florida, just, run-of-the-mill high school team down here. And he struggled a little bit. And Stephen, you and Azubi went out there, and we were talking. And, when you're a young kid like this and all these colleges start recruiting you, Penn State, I think Florida State, obviously Miami, you commit to Miami after going to the Miami camp and wowing Shannon Dawson a little bit. That comes with a little pressure because now that people are looking at you and wanting to see a dude, okay? And it's not so easy to be a junior in high school going into a season with expectations now all of a sudden. And Luke Nickel might have come down with a little bit of baggage in that regard, to be honest and fair to Luke, and probably didn't play his best game in the season opener. You and Azubi were there to watch every minute of it. We'll have a story on the website this morning. Your thoughts on what you saw of Luke Nickel last night?
Yeah, well, we talk about expectations. These aren't expectations that are easy for a 16-year-old kid to meet. Remember, this is a 2025 guy, so he's a junior in high school at the moment, just started his junior year. He turned 16 back in February, so he's still definitely feeling things out. The game is not coming to him as fast as it ultimately will whenever he's 17, 18, 19 years old, just like it does with literally every person on the planet. But I think we saw the other night kind of a player who is still fighting to meet those expectations. He struggled. I'll say it. I won't sugarcoat it. He was not the cleanest. That was not his cleanest game. He was not as efficient, I think, as he wanted to be, and we saw it with visible signs of frustration. Was playing on really shoddy field conditions. I remembered walking across the field at the end of the game when I was actually on the phone with you, and my foot got stuck in the mud on the 15-yard line in the middle of the field while I was trying to walk across the field. My shoe almost came off. And I remember thinking to myself, man, their kicker had to kick a field goal from this spot.
No, man, that was the witchcraft of Gary Ferman. I probably didn't like what you were saying on the phone, and I snapped my fingers, and mud appeared on the field at Fort Lauderdale Western High School, and you just happened to plant your right foot right smack in it. That's my way of straightening you out, young guy.
Well, Luke Nickel definitely didn't appreciate it either. We saw throughout the night consistently, he was just having a hard time gripping the ball. It rained really hard out at Western before the game. Then it let up the humidity. I checked my phone at one point. It was 82% humidity at 9 p.m., which I think is about whenever halftime rolled around. And God, what ended up being like a 3-hour high school football game. Very sloppy play on both sides. Neither offensive or defensive line played particularly well. Milton's tackles, the left tackle had a little bit of trouble with the edge rusher. There were a few protections that weren't set right. Or Milton's right tackle had a few just outright whiffs that kind of caused things to break down. Receivers weren't really on the same page. Nickel's timing was off. It was just kind of if things could go poorly. If there was a way for things to go more poorly, I'm really not sure what you would add on to it. Nickel himself I will give him this. He avoided the big mistake. He did not have a single glaring play that I just thought to myself, oh my goodness, that was horrible. That's inexcusable. I'm not sure how you justify this play. He played smart, I thought, for the most part. He didn't throw any interceptions. There were a ton of dropped passes, but I think that this was kind of a moment where we all sat back and thought to ourselves, man, the expectations are really, really high for this kid. And he's a guy who, yes, he's at Milton, and yes, that's a school that lost to Buford, I believe is a top 5 national team in the country this year. They lost to Buford in the state semifinals a season ago, and they plan on winning a state championship at Georgia's highest level of competition this year. And the upside is definitely still there for Luke. We saw a lot of positives from him last year. He looked very, very good in the camp workout, but he just was not able to settle into a rhythm for whatever reason. The offense was kind of out of sync, and he did have an efficient drive early on where he actually threw his first touchdown pass of the season on either, I think it was the first or the second drive of the game. But it definitely wasn't up to his expectation, and he was very vocal about the fact that he did not meet his own expectation. I saw there was one moment where he went over to the sideline after a drive where a receiver dropped one ball. Then he threw another pass too low on a sprint out, and then he wasn't able to hook up with the receiver on a fade on what probably should have been a holding call. And I saw him go over to the bench, and he sits down, and I could tell he was definitely trying to keep this one to himself because he didn't want to be the guy who was throwing a tantrum on the end of the bench. He kind of took his helmet and he just went, oh, just a really light little slam where it was one of these things where it was one of these things where you really think to yourself, like, man, this is a kid. He's not mad at, the officiating or the offensive line or his receivers. He's mad at himself. He's frustrated with himself because he knows the level that he's capable of playing at. And he knows whenever he's on all cylinders, whenever he's in rhythm, he's a guy who's capable of playing at a school like the University of Miami. He's a guy who programs like Florida State and Penn State want to try to flip away from Coral Gables. The bright news also, all of his season goals are still totally in front of him. He had one bad game against an out-of-state opponent where they actually had to fly down. They actually had to fly down for a game, play on a Thursday night, and it's pre-district, so this isn't going to have any effect on their ability to make the playoffs or have a chance to win out the season. They have a lot of talent around him. I think this is just something where he's going to need more snaps, just like most 2025 quarterbacks are. And I think this is going to come with time. Like I said, I think everything is in front for Luke Nickel, and I think he understands that too. And I think and I truly do believe he is going to be a good, polished thrower of the football by the time that 2025 season comes and the 2025 recruiting class really steps into the spotlight.
Well, the frustration display is kind of like what I was talking about. I mean, that comes from expecting to do better. And all the attention that he has gotten in the offseason, starting to get the offers, committing to Miami, brings a little bit of that pressure with it. And that's, I think, why we maybe saw him on opening night blowing off some steam. It's kind of like you go to these junior tennis tournaments and there's always these kids smashing rackets and screaming and temper tantrums and all that. That's the pressure of being young and wanting to win and wanting to impress. And, a young quarterback's not devoid from that also. So it's going to be fun watching to see how he develops. Right now, he is the quarterback, the first quarterback commit, at least in the 2025 class. We'll see where things go from here. All right, we've got some other recruiting stories on the website today. We catch up with American Heritage High School head coach Mike Smith. This is a guy that knows what talent looks like, okay? I mean, American Heritage pumps out, college stars, NFL stars. They've got over a dozen active NFL players that have come out of that program. They know what it looks like there. And even though Malachi Tony is a young 2026 kid, Smith believes that he's on this path to be as good as any of the Patriots who played before him, Steven. Is this a head coach getting a little ahead of himself, or is Malachi Tony really that kind of goods?
I really do believe Malachi Tony is that kind of good. I've had a chance to see him now a couple of times. I am all in on Malachi Tony. It's not often that I'll get excited about a 2026 recruit or say, yeah, it's important that Miami got this 2026 guy who won't be in college for 3 years. But with a guy as talented as Malachi Tony, I really do believe this is undoubtedly going to be a highly ranked 4-star recruit by the time that we get those 2026 rankings out, which I believe will probably be sometime in the 2024 calendar year. I see a guy who's extremely versatile, a very advanced route runner for his age, understands the importance of really doing the little things in his routes. One of the routes on his highlight reel, you see him sell a beautiful fake, like he's going to block the linebackers before he peels out on what I think ultimately ends up kind of being like a wheel route style route. And he completely sells the defense into forgetting about him fully. And I thought to myself, wow, that's not only savvy, but that's also a tremendous job of understanding how a defense thinks and understanding the importance of selling yourself on the little things. And by doing these very small things over and over and over again, the advantages that you can create for yourself. He had over 500 yards catching last season. I think he almost had 600 yards. He had like 6 touchdowns or 8 touchdowns. I don't have his stats in front of me, but this is the kind of kid who's going to put himself on pace for 800, 900, maybe even 1,000 yards receiving by the time that his senior season comes rolling around. This is a guy. Ohio State was a program that was after him. Ohio State was a program that wanted him. We talk about Miami really wanting to build that pipeline to American Heritage. Heck, Ohio State wants it too. Just ask Brandon Inniss. I know that. I know that's a sore spot for Canes fans talking about Brandon Inniss. But I definitely think that this was a get where it's good that Miami has him now. It really is. I really do think it's important that he's committed to the Hurricanes right now, because now you're going to put him in a position where, if he wants to go elsewhere, he's going to have a tough conversation with a coaching staff that he holds in very high regard, a head coach that he has tremendous respect for. And he's going to have to look him in the eye and tell him, hey, guys, I appreciate everything that you've done for me, but I'm going to have to decommit. I'm going to go elsewhere. And just like we were talking about earlier in the show, with it, it being easier for you to land a commitment than to flip a kid. And that's because it really is hard for these kids to look these coaches in the eyes who they have, these really strong bonds with, and say, guys, I'm sorry. I appreciate everything that you've done. I appreciate the connection that we've built, but I'm going to have to go to this other school. I really do think that Malachi Tony, it is great that Miami has him now. I think this is a name that we are going to be hearing for a very long time. And I think that it's really good. Matt Shodell said this the other day. I think it's really good that there's palpable buzz at American Heritage that Miami might be the place to be. This really does say that at least the kids in those circles, they're hearing good things about Miami. They're hearing exciting things about Miami, because let me tell you, there's some kids in that 2026 class over at American Heritage that are pretty talented. And Diabell is really the first name that pops to my mind. South Florida has not had a tremendous amount of really elite quarterbacks in recent years. Diabell has a chance to be that. And he's a guy who's teammates with Malachi Tony, and I guarantee you they're talking about Miami. They're thinking about Miami. They're talking about colleges together. They're talking about the different schools and what they offer, and hearing positivity about the Canes and hearing teammates say good things about the Canes. That really does have an effect on these 15, 16, 17-year-old kids.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that Mark Fletcher is going to be playing a lot for Miami this year if he stays healthy, and that's going to really strengthen Miami's hand at American Heritage. All right, we also St. Thomas Aquinas does not want to be forgotten, and we have a story today about 2024 three-star cornerback Ryan Mack, who is committed to the Canes. He's preparing for his senior season. We've got a story on him. We also have a preseason peek at Northport, Alabama, Tuscaloosa County running back commit Kevin Riley, a kid that is going to be an absolute stud in college. And we talked to his coach, Adam Weingarten, about what kind of season that they can be expecting from Kevin Riley. I know that Miami is so high on him and so thrilled that they were able to get his commitment. So you guys can catch up on him here today on the website. We even have a look at all of the Miami commits and their schedules. So those of you that want to follow their high school seasons, you could see when they're going to be playing, and we will be updating their progress every week at CaneSport.com for you guys. So you have that to look forward to. Also, some football coverage today. The ACC Network's Roddy Jones did a segment with On3's Andy Staples talking about an outside perspective on Miami. It was so good. We said we got to put that on the website so you guys can check that out. We also have an update with Vanderbilt transfer Jadaeus Richard, defensive back, who can help the Miami secondary this year in multiple spots. I think you're going to see him at corner. You might see him at nickel. You might even see him at safety. This is a kid that's played a lot of football in the SEC. I know you haven't thought about him that much to this point, but with the season beginning in a week, I think you're going to see a lot of Jadaeus Richard out on the football field. So we have a story with him so you guys can start getting to know him. We also have a story with another cornerback, Darryl Porter Jr., a transfer a year ago, also went to American Heritage. He shares his thoughts and on the Miami cornerbacks room and how he's looking to be a solid force under Lance Guidry. So make sure you check that out as well. So that's going to do it for this morning for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you so much for starting out your day with us. If you like this show, like this channel, hit your subscribe button. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube. And more than anything, if you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please rush on over to our website. We have a season opening 50% off special that we have just activated on the site for you guys. Take advantage of it. Become a CaneSport.com subscriber. That's for new subscribers. If you just want to try it out for a month, there's a monthly special as well. So come on board, join our community. We don't think you will be sorry. And we thank everyone for their subscriptions that allow us to do what we do every day to hopefully enhance your fan experience. So for Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Make sure you're on the website. On Saturday, we will have a lot of news on those announcements, and it'll be game week when we come back on Monday morning for the next Good Morning CaneSport. Time to start getting ready for the other Miami of Ohio. We know that you're a fan of the right Miami. We'll leave it at that. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time, everybody.